Hi and welcome back. In this lecture, we're talking about filter. Now that we've got our generators, iterators, and iterables out the way, we can start with some fun built-in functions. The filter function is a built-in function in Python that you can call from any file or program. That's what built-in means. And it takes two arguments. The first argument to the filter function is another function. And it also takes an iterable. So it goes something like this. Let's define a friends list, like Rolf, Jose, Randy, Anna, and Mary, and I know I've missed one. And now we're going to use the filter function so that we only get the friends that start with the letter R. So, start with R is going to be filter, this is the function. Now, it takes a function, first argument, arg1, function that returns true or false. So the first argument to this filter function has to be another function that returns true or false, depending on what we want to filter. So let me define a function up here. Starts with R, friend. Return friend.starts with R. Friend.starts with R is going to be true if this argument here starts with an R. And it's going to be false if it doesn't. So, the first argument to the filter function has to be this starts with R function. And the second argument has to be an iterable. We know what these are, so friends is an iterable, because we can iterate over it, it's a list. And that's it. This is what the filter function looks like. And what it does is it only keeps the elements for which this returns true. So, the first time the filter function runs through, it's going to give you Rolf. Rolf going over to the friend. Friend starts with R is going to be true, so Rolf will be kept by the filter function. Then it will go again, and this time with Jose. Jose starts with R is false, so filter will remove it and ignore it. And so on for every friend here. The interesting thing is that filter actually returns a generator, so that it's a bit more efficient. Instead of copying your list with only the elements you want to keep, you have to call the next start with R element so that you get the next available element, which in this case is going to be Rolf. And if you do that again, and again, you'll get Randy, and finally you'll get this stop iteration exception that we talked about earlier on is what signals the end of a sequence or a generator or an iterator when you reach the end of it. Okay, when you do a for loop, what the for loop is doing in the background is just calling next. And as soon as you reach the stop iteration, the for loop stops and it doesn't give you the error because the stop iteration has been designed to mean that. And the for loop is a construct that uses stop iteration to know when it's reached the end. Okay? Now, of course, if you do list of start with R, then it's going to give you a list of all the elements in the generator. It's going to go through each element and it's going to put it in a new list. Now, if you do it again, what do you think is going to happen? Well, you'll get an empty list. The list object here doesn't raise the stop iteration, but it sees that the stop iteration is raised and it just doesn't give you anything. It gives you an empty list now because the generator's already been used. And it remembers that it's reached the end, so it can't give you anything else. This is why I explained generators, iterators, and iterables before going into this filter function. Okay. Now, of course, instead of defining a function here that takes a parameter and returns that the parameter starts with R, we could just use a lambda. This lambda function is exactly the same thing. So it takes one parameter, and after the colon, we define what it returns. And what it returns is x.starts with R. So this is either true or false, depending on whether x starts with R. If it makes you feel better, you can call the parameter friend. And that way, maybe it's a bit clearer that this function is going to operate on these friends here. Then you no longer need that function there. And we also no longer need this comment, since we know what it means now. this filter function here is identical to this generator expression here, this generator comprehension that says f for f in friends if f dot starts with r. So these two are identical, okay? Here we've got ourselves a generator expression, a generator comprehension that puts each friend into a new generator, but only if f starts with r. So these two are the same. Okay. Which one is faster? Which one performs better? This one. Generator comprehension performs better, in this case, at least. And the reason for that is because you have to create this lambda function in this filter, and you don't have to create a lambda function in the generator expression. If you already have your function defined elsewhere in your program, the filter function can perform better. And also in some cases, I think the filter function can be more readable. Although in many other cases, I think the list comprehension is more readable. So it's up to you which one you use. I'll normally go for the comprehensions. It's also a bit more Pythonic. And by the way, just for completeness, so it's clear exactly what's going on, these two, filter and this generator comprehension, is identical to this other function that I'm going to define. Is another filter function, very much like this one, that takes in a function and an iterable, and is going to iterate over the iterable, is going to check whether the function returns true or not, and then it's going to yield I at the end if the function is true. So let's imagine that we call my custom filter here. Lambda friend starts with r is this function. The iterable is our friends list. We iterate over the iterable, we get the first element, that's Rolf. If func I, that is friend starts with r, is true, which it is, then we're going to yield I, that's Rolf. When we call next on this function, we're going to get Rolf, and then we're going to stop right after line 9. When we call next again, we're going to go back to the top, that's I. We're going to, that's Jose, by the way, the string Jose. We're going to check if the function matches. It's going to be false. So we're not going to yield anything. We don't stop. We go over to the next element of the loop. We check if Randy starts with R, and it does. So then we yield Randy and we stop. Next time we call next, we go over here and it's Anna. It's false, so we don't yield, we continue. I is Mary, it's false, so we don't yield, we continue. We reach the end, that's a stop iteration. So we reach the end of the generator object, and that's another stop iteration, which tells us that we've reached the end. So hopefully this makes sense. It is starting to get a bit more into what Python is all about, which is this managing of data and sending data from one place to another. And yield is extremely powerful because it lets you stop and generate the values one by one without having to store them all in memory at the same time. Anyway, that's it for this video. I just wanted to show you this filter function and how it's used. And the filter function is also present in many other programming languages, so you'll see it everywhere as you develop your programming skills and you continue your programming journey. So yeah, that's it, and I'll see you on the next video.